Thank you, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think many of you would be a regular visitor to this kind of events and shared services forum conclaves. And one thing which stands, and who are visiting for the first time, attending for the first time, just to let you know on a lighter note, it has been a discipline now that I get as part of the agenda 30 minutes slot to speak. And finally, what is left is 5 minutes to finish. So this is a discipline for last 6 years, and I will ensure I finish my session in the next 5 minutes. So I'll not run through all the slides, I'll just talk about. See, I think what is important here is this mic working? Is mic working? Okay. So I think what is important is to talk about these two publications which we unveiled today morning. What goes into it? I think there has been, every year the research team thinks about where we are going, and since morning we're all talking about changing world, we all are talking about how it was 1,000 years back and 20 years back and 100 years back. We got some interesting example about wheels to bullock cart, and we spoke about the 100 years back, the 60% of the Americans were opting or going for agriculture. So a lot of change we spoke in the morning, so I'll not go into the changes, but I think for us also, the point was to look at what is happening today. That's one part. What is the opportunity to go forward? And that's why the whole theme, as Sanjay was introducing in the morning, is about rebooting business process strategy, taking a step back, reflecting, and taking a pause and saying, what from here now? If you want to really sustain, and sustenance is just part of your normal ongoing cycle, what are the key differentiators which has to be looked for, making sure the sustainability. So for that, what we did was we spent time and we went through a typical pattern of our research, and we interacted. The three things we did, we look at primary research. So we interacted with some of the industry leaders. We sent some questionnaires, requested them to fill those questionnaires, receive their perspectives. We received a lot of perspectives over the call. We had a one-to-one conversation with some of the CXOs, GIC heads. We also have a plethora of knowledge repository available with Shared Services Forum now, thanks to our last 6 years of the intensive research. And we also looked at some secondary research in terms of white papers, journals, which is already published in the public forum. So we looked at all these three and try to reflect and put this whole, oops. Okay. So we put these three specific areas. We say, what is this changing world? Today's excellence is tomorrow's mediocrity. If today you are excellent, that is not enough. So that was one thing which came out very loud and clear as part of our research, that if you think you are good, it's optimum. If you think you are excellent, it is tomorrow's mediocrity. As I was talking about, we also tried to identify some differentiators from here now in terms of what is that is going to sustain or bring that excellence to be sustained over the period of time. And what we have done is we got about 20 plus differentiators shared by the leaders across the industry. We put our filter, we put our further application of mind and said, okay, there's some which is very basic and there's some which is so progressive which can't be implemented so quickly now. So you have to also wear the hat of practicality. You have to also wear the hat of something which can be done now. Is it possible to be implemented in the current environment and the context or not? I mean, it also depends upon the organization to organization. So what we did was we tried to balance it. We tried to balance it, and from the 20, we identified about 7 or 8 and said, okay, this is something which we are going to look at as the key differentiator. And that's why it's called Practitioner's Guide. We have given an intro of this 7, 8 differentiators and classified into 2 buckets. One bucket is for the organizations who are just getting into the journey of shared services or in the verge of exploration, looking at the strategy of shared services or GICs. The second bucket of the differentiator is for the matured organizations like matured GICs who are already in the existence for 2 decades, having very matured processes, procedures, framework. They have already achieved in terms of a lot of best practices, transformation, people transformation, technology transformation, process transformation. They've already reached some of the maturity on those stage. So we looked both the buckets of the organization and carved this differentiator from that perspective. Some may be applicable to one, some may not be applicable to other, but we try to balance that. The third thing what we, as part of the differentiator when we were reflecting, we realized one is very critical now here is to even know where you are. We all claim we are excellent. There are a lot of benchmarking models, there are a lot of capability models which is available, which provides you where you are in terms of level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. But what it gives you is quite on the capability side. What it gives you is quite a lot on the whole center put together, where do you stand. What we did was, we reflected and said, okay, we'll create a new model that's called process maturity model. So each sub-process level you can identify where do you stand in terms of your maturity. You are a level 0 or you're level 4, which is a 5 level, so we have talked about that. So we'll talk and I'll just share quickly about that model as well. I'll not spend much time on the changing world, but just one specific thing which we gave again here is what we call as an aid to VUCA. VUCA everybody is talking about. In fact, VUCA is given now. In fact, somebody says like in the morning also, it's not about VUCA is now given. You don't need to talk about changing world. What is important is to say how you'll handle that, how will you work on that. So we've given a framework called AID. We are saying agile, innovation, disruption, and excellence, AID, AID as a framework. We also talked about the AND paradigm, how to look at it. It's not about either or. Like for example, today morning there was a question by saying, should we be pragmatic and slow or should we be very fast? So everything has to be looked from the eyes of AND paradigm. You have to look at both the dimensions and try to see how you can balance it. That's also we are trying to put as part of this guide. One interesting pointer which we realize that we all talk about people transformation, process transformation, technology transformation, and we think people is culture. It is not true. So we said culture is something which obviously is created by people, but culture has to be seen separately, and hence we are saying the cultural connect also has to come as part of the changing world thinking and the guide. These are a few differentiators. We spoke, I was trying to say there are two buckets to it, the organizations who are in the process of exploration or in the verge of they're getting into their strategy, and the ones who are matured. So I'll just pick one or two from here. I think from the organization who are starting their journey, there are three things basically we are saying they need to look at. Business performance focus, that's the first one. That's a mantra. What happens is the organizations set up their shared services, which becomes a BPC. If you remember, we had a model called business process management, and we said business process consolidation, business process transformation, business process skills and systems. So BPC, which is consolidation, is largely seen as shared services, while the objective of the organization was to create a consolidated center or a consolidation of processes to enable business performance. And over a period of time, the whole strategy dilutes because the focus starts building too much on the transaction, the processing. They focus on the customer satisfaction, but they are not able to focus on the business performance. And business performance here, I mean by the organization's performance, the company's performance, not the shared services performance. And we have given some examples in our publication in terms of how it can be looked at, really a captive or a shared services, how that operations can really connect to the business performance. A very simple and basic example, and many of you would be already doing it. Simple reconciliation process in a finance and accounting space, how it can enable the financial controller or a CFO to create some write-backs much beyond the control. Create the opportunity of revenue generation through analytics. So focus on the business performance and not just on the process. Oh, we have given a model here called build. So business performance, we are saying it's a model. We have actually put a framework called build. Benefits, users, information, leadership, and de-risk. And we have given how to look at the benefits. Benefits is just not about cost, it's also the cost and value. So both has to be looked at. The focus is cost, while the outcome has to be the value, if you're looking at a business performance. If you're looking at users, the customer acquisition and retention is the focus, but the outcome is all about customer experience. And I'll take a quick 30 seconds to talk about this customer experience here itself. We have a separate differentiator called customer experience, but I'll build it from here itself. A customer experience generally is connected back with the customer satisfaction. And in fact, we are giving a lot of research data and saying it is just not customer satisfaction. what happens is there is a customer journey which happens over a multiple touch points, and satisfaction is looked only for one touch point, while the experience of a customer is across multiple touch points. And how the multiple touch points are looked by a provider to bring that experience is also one of the areas we are saying has to be looked at. I'll just move into the another one, which is the strategic vision on BPM. This is again for the organization who are getting into the journey of shared services. There is 6x success model we are talking about here by saying this is a framework, this is a guide you should look at when you're creating your a journey for shared services. Surely having a strategic alignment in the beginning itself. It should not become a functional focus. It should become an organizational focus. It should be looking at right kind of scoping, because sometimes I've received inputs and some of them requests by saying, oh, can I look at one sub process and can you set up a shared services for this one sub process? I said, okay, this is very nice, but do you have a long-term thinking about it? Do you have a strategy around it? How to go about it? No, but we want only because I am the owner of this process, which is payments for accounts payables, not even accounts payable. So payments process can be consolidated. It's a good thing, but it's not shared services. You can't reap the benefit of a true shared services. So if you really want to do that, you need to get really the strategic thinking behind it. So moving beyond the functional thinking to organizational thinking, so scoping becomes important. Sponsorship, who is sponsoring that project? Is it part of a CEO's agenda or not? Is it part of the leadership agenda or not? Is it something which is being reviewed by the leadership or the board or not in terms of where you are? If it is not, obviously it is going to die its own death because it's going to remain in one corner. So is it becoming important to be looked at by the CEO or not? So sponsorship. Another one which is important is staging. Sometimes people say, maybe you want to start with one sub-process, which is okay. But that is implementation. But your strategy has to be looked holistically. So it should become, so you don't need to boil the ocean overnight. You don't need to have all the processes being implemented. That is something which we identified as part of our research. So implementation can be staged, but at least the scoping, thinking, strategic alignment can be holistic. This was an interesting one. I'd like to take a quick 1 minute on this. I think moving up the relationship value chain. We're not talking about moving up the process value chain. We're not talking about moving up the partnership value chain. We are saying moving up the relationship value chain. Many of these shared services or the GICs who are matured, they have grown from being a service provider to maybe a service partner. Or sometimes they have grown up to even become a business partner because of the kind of things they have implemented in the organization. They have gone beyond their just typical SLAs and the contracts and started delivering to the business. So in terms of the organization focus, many of these entities have gone and delivered that. We said enterprise perspective, you need to focus, the organizational perspective, you need to focus on these 4 levels. So you move from a service provider to a service partner to a business partner, and from business partner to an enterprise partner. That's an organizational focus. And we have given the method in terms of how it has to be done. It's a 4 levels of organizational connect. The same time, what is critical here is it has to be a leader's role also in that. So for example, I'm a GIC head, so my organization has a focus to move from a provider to an enterprise partner, but as a GIC head or maybe my leadership team also needs to play that leader's role to move up the relationship value chain from just being a service focus by saying, okay, my SLAs are met, my TAT is okay, I'm doing 100% of my service satisfaction, moving beyond that to saying, I own the relationship. If something is wrong somewhere, I'll take up. And I think many of the organization has matured to talk about, for example, POT or the cycle time, moved from a TAT to a cycle time. So we have, many of the organizations have moved and the leaders are talking language. But now, the interesting 2 levels we spoke, which we have added here is a collaborative partnership and a trust advisor. The point we were saying was, and it's a very interesting one, and deliberation, Sanjay and I was having a very interesting deliberation. You were saying was, just a couple of nights back, at midnight at 12 o'clock. And the deliberation was, if a client, which is the headquarter, reaches out to a provider, a GIC, and says, hey, I need this from you, is it where you are in terms of relationship value chain? So the point was, if the client reaches out to the service provider or service provider head, GIC head, and says, hey, look, I need this from you. If he is looking for a service to be delivered, you are a service provider. But if he's reaching out to you to say, hey, look, I'm going through a mesh. My business is going through a mesh. I have to do a $1 billion cost cutting across the globe. tell me how to go about it. I have no idea. And the shared services head has no relationship with the topic, has no connect with the topic. He may get some benefits later, but right now no connect, and he provides an advice. He becomes a trusted advisor. So same people talking, but the point is what you speak about. So what has happened is the service provider or the GIC head has matured to become a trusted advisor over years in terms of his relationship, and not remaining a service focus. So that's one thing. I just give you an interesting example, and I think it was very fantastic. One of the third-party BPOs, and I interacted with many of the leaders, I realized one of the vertical heads. So as part of the deal advisory, one of my global clients, they offshored processes to one of the third-party BPOs. And this group CTO was in country, and he was supposed to go back, and he was just having a couple of hours to leave from one city to other city and going back and taking flight back to UK. The vertical head, he was somewhere outside the country, and he said, I can't, instead of, so there's kind of response, and you can always understand where he fits in, the vertical head of third-party BPO, where he fits in the relationship value chain. So when I reached out to him and said, you know what, the group CTO of the client is coming, there's a potential, we would like to see if you are available to meet with you. His response was, oh, that's very nice. Can I do one thing? Can I meet him at the airport? He's in Bangalore, that guy I'm speaking is in Bangalore, the group CTO is in Delhi, saying, I'll come to Delhi airport before his flight to UK for 1 hour to meet him at the airport and just meet him and greet him, etc. Then I asked him, why you can't come in the day? No, I'm busy in the day. So his response was not, I'm not available in the day. His response was, I will make sure I meet him. And we felt bad by saying, okay, God, this guy will be coming all the way to the airport just to meet for half an hour and go. So the maturity of conversation, it led into by saying, thank you, you're not required to come. Rather, he could have started by saying, oh, I'm busy, and we are a small client, leave it. So it's about relationship, how you focus in terms of relationship. This is an interesting one I like to take. I think a lot of GIC leaders sitting here, and I think we are trying to make a point. We are actually, we are recommending that that's again a differentiator that the GICs has to look forward and to sustain, is look at make versus buy. Earlier, this make versus buy was done by the headquarters. Earlier, this make versus buy decision was taken by the headquarters or the parent company or the parent organization. We are saying the GICs should look at make versus buy. It's all about, I think, going back to examples like pharmaceuticals has done it very well. The contract manufacturing. In a way, the whole operations, either within yourself or outside, is something which you own. Rather, parent saying you have a GIC and an outsourced operation, what you need to look at is that, is it worth for me to further add 10,000 more people or 5,000 more people or 500 more people in my own infrastructure and manage it? Or in terms of the process value chain, I should look at a partner who delivers back to the GIC, and the GIC still own the process. The ownership is still with the GIC, not with a partner. So that's another thing which we are saying has to be looked at. It's again going back and connecting with a manufacturing example. Today morning, for instance, we're talking about a manufacturing example. It's assembly in a component system, like an automobile company. What they do is finally they assemble everything and they brand it, but the ownership of that automobile is with the company. Finally, the wheels is coming from a different company, the tires coming from different places, the bearings coming from a different place, etc., and they know what they want to retain it. Even the engineering design we were saying can be looked at outsourcing. So the point is the ownership of the GIC has to be with these processes. Rather, parent thinking of make versus buy, the thinking of make versus buy has to be with GICs if they want to sustain and bring as a differentiator. I'll take this as the last. A process maturity model is something which we are launching, releasing as part of this. This is a framework where we are saying there is 5 labels in terms of the process. I'll just read the labels as an overall name of the label. There's a lot of information to that, but I'll just read the names of the label. Person dependent is level 0. If you're doing a process which is person dependent, Ram has not come, Shyam has done it, whatever, that becomes a person dependent, so level 0. So you continue doing that, you are level 0. If you get process oriented, you become level 1 for that specific process area. I'm again taking example. This level 2 is fragmented deployment. So I do a process the way I do. I have everything documented. I have a good documentation, big SOPs created. I know it. I have done it. So I do 10 transactions, and out of 10 transactions, I do 8 one way and 2 different way. And there's other person sitting in the room. He also does 8 one way and 2 different way. There's a fragmented deployment. You have still not make that process completely process oriented. So you're moving from a fragmented deployment to a consistent deployment. If it is each time, every time, anyone, whoever is doing it, is doing the same way. That is the way the manufacturing is. It becomes a consistent deployment. And that's very important. I mind you, it's about exceptions as well. People say exceptions are different. So what I have variance is exceptions. We are saying even looking at exceptions sometimes, how can you process or create a procedure for even exceptions? The last one in the label is the continuous value delivery. How you move from the consistent deployment to the continuous value delivery in terms of challenging your own self, in terms of your process targets, in terms of your metrics, in terms of your cost metrics for each sub-process, how you target your own self every time, each time. So there are 6 parameters and 5 labels. So there are 6 parameters we are, as part of this, we are talking about, and there are 5 labels of this model. And this model will be also shared with you as part of a tent card very shortly post the lunch. And we'll be very happy to take questions on some of these differentiators as we go ahead through the day. This publication's e-copy will be complimentary, shared with each one of you as the part of, because you are part of the delegation, which will be shared post the event. And we'll be happy to take any questions through the day. That's all. Thank you.